all women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public, because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children. Men will die for their wives and children. And God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts, the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. And the transcendentals, the good, true, and beautiful. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Feminismus delendus est. China's struggles. Overpopulation, jobs, marriage, and the one-child policy. Written by Conrad Riker. Available now. Links in description. Chinese masculinity crisis. A manual for seeing through the performance. Picture a revolution announced in the gentlest possible language. Children liberated from the supposed toxicity of biological sex and fatherly authority, placed instead into a gender-neutral, state-supervised care model where safety is the highest virtue and masculinity is the original sin to be conditioned away. Dr. Winona, feminist Marxist, and her ideological inheritors call this compassion. They call it justice. They call it liberation from the patriarchal family, that ancient site of exploitation where fathers, those bearers of the dreaded Y chromosome, dared to set boundaries, transmit names, teach discipline, and form children into men and women capable of self-governance. But strip away the therapeutic vocabulary, the HR-approved pronouns, the safeguarding forms, and what remains is the most audacious power grab in human history. The state declaring itself a better father than every father who ever lived, while keeping the invoice for the privilege. The contradiction is total and lethal. A movement claiming to liberate the individual from oppressive structures simply erects a new and far less accountable hierarchy, identity categories policed by bureaucratic elites whose authority derives not from sacrifice, provision, or competence, but from their mastery of the safetyism ratchet. Each minor discomfort is escalated into a rights violation. Each rights violation demands state intervention. Each intervention strips another layer of family sovereignty and male coding paternity, provision, protection, discipline, worship, inheritance from the architecture of civilization. They did not abolish patriarchy. They abolished good patriarchy, father rule as sacrificial office, authority proportional to responsibility, the household as the first government, and replaced it with the worst kind. Bureaucrats who possess every power of the father and none of his duties, who can take your children, your wages, your name, and your reputation, while suffering none of the consequences of their own incompetence. At Nuremberg, the world learned that sovereign command is not the same as justice. The lesson was forgotten. What follows is a map back from the abyss, a cartography of restoration drawn from the deep grammar of Western civilization, from Genesis to the Trivium, from Roman Pietas to Thomistic natural law, from the household altar to the common law courtroom. We will name every demon feminism as gynocentric grievance machine, cultural Marxism as alien parasitism, the war on boys as civilizational autoimmune disease, the safetyism ratchet as the mechanism by which free men are reduced to passive clients of the therapeutic state. Then we will rebuild ordered liberty, sexed reality, father rule restored to its throne of sacrifice. The family as sovereign household, due process as sacred firewall, virtue as trained power ordered to the good. The ancient masters are not dead. They are waiting for men disciplined enough to understand them. This is the counter-revolution. It begins with a single detonating question that the entire revolutionary project cannot survive. If the state can redefine what a man is, What stops it from redefining what a man owes? Dr. Winona's Cultural Revolution article. By Dr. Winona, feminist, Marxist, Department of Critical Family Studies, Harvard University. The traditional family has long been understood by critical scholars as the primary site of capitalist reproduction. What remains insufficiently theorized, however, is the mechanism by which the patriarchal household converts biological difference into hierarchical domination, a process we must now, with urgency, name, map, and dismantle. The pro-denominational care model I propose offers a framework for liberation that moves beyond critique into institutional transformation. At its center is a simple ethical claim. No child should be born into a structure that predetermines their identity, role, and worth according to the accidents of biological sex and the inherited authority of a father whose position owes more to historical violence than to any natural ordering. The family as site of production. Marx demonstrated that the bourgeois family reproduces property relations through inheritance, primogeniture, and the legal encoding of the household as an economic unit. Feminist theory extended this analysis by revealing that the family also reproduces gender itself, not as a natural fact, but as a performative regime enforced through male-coded authority structures. The father, in the traditional map, is not merely a parent. He is a distribution mechanism for patriarchal logic. He names the child, determines its boundaries, models its hierarchy, and initiates it into a cosmology in which male presence means law and female presence means nurture. This is not care, this is capture. The child becomes a vessel for the reproduction of the very system that constrains them. The pro-denominational model asks, what if the state, guided by experts trained in trauma-informed, intersectional care methodologies, assumed the distributive functions currently monopolized by the biological father? What if safety, defined as the absence of male-coded aggression and the presence of professionally supervised emotional regulation, became the precondition for all child development? Toward a gender-neutral assimilation. The great gender-neutral assimilation is not a program of erasure, as reactionary critics claim. It is a program of expansion. By removing the binary framework that assigns identity at birth, we open the child to the full spectrum of human possibility. Gender, as decades of scholarship have demonstrated, is a social construct, a lived experience rather than a biological destiny. To insist otherwise is to commit an act of epistemic violence. Under the pro-denominational framework, the child is not a boy or a girl in any ontologically meaningful sense. The child is a person in process, and the role of the care institution is to facilitate that process without imposing predetermined categories. This requires, necessarily, the removal of male-coded authority from the developmental environment, not because men are inherently dangerous, but because masculinity as currently constructed encodes dominance, competition, risk-taking, and emotional suppression as virtues. These are not virtues. They are trauma responses institutionalized across millennia. The safetyism ratchet, a feature, not a bug. Critics of our framework frequently object that the expansion of safety definitions creates a ratchet effect. Each newly identified harm requires new intervention, new regulation, new expertise. This objection assumes that the ratchet is a defect. It is not, it is the mechanism by which progress occurs. Consider the trajectory. We began by recognizing physical abuse as harm. We then expanded to emotional abuse, then to psychological abuse, then to the threat of abuse, the atmosphere of male-coded authority itself, even when no specific violent act occurs. Each expansion was met with resistance, and each resistance was overcome by the moral clarity of care. This is the safetyism ratchet, the principled refusal to accept any level of discomfort as natural or inevitable. If a child experiences distress in the presence of a gendered hierarchy, that distress is data. If a girl internalizes the message that her role is to nurture, that is harm. If a boy is taught that his value lies in physical courage, that is harm. The ratchet ensures that each recognition of harm generates new institutional responsibility, which is precisely what a caring society should do. The Gender Justice Act, law as liberation. The Gender Justice Act represents the legal codification of these ethical insights. It establishes that biological sex has no legitimate role in the determination of custody, education, healthcare, or identity documentation from minors. It creates a framework in which professionally trained care supervisors, operating under prodenominational guidelines, assume the distributive and formative functions previously reserved for parents operating within patriarchal structures. Some have objected that the act exceeds legitimate state authority. This objection relies on a natural law framework that assigns ontological priority to biological sex and the traditional family. But as legal scholarship has established, the authority of law derives not from metaphysical claims about nature, but from the sovereign power to enact and enforce. The Gender Justice Act was duly enacted by the legislative body, upheld by the courts, and implemented through proper administrative channels. Its legitimacy is legal, not metaphysical. The Act does not abolish the family, it redefines it. Under the prodenominational model, the family becomes a site of professionally supervised care, guided by principles of inclusion, safety, and identity affirmation. Parents who align with these principles retain their roles. Parents who resist, who insist on imposing binary gender frameworks, male authority structures, or religious cosmologies that contradict the child's lived experience are subject to intervention, not as punishment, but as protection. The question of competence. A persistent objection from reactionary quarters holds that the prodenominational model replaces merit with identity politics. This could not be more mistaken. The model replaces inherited merit, a fiction by which fathers pass on privilege under the guise of competence, with demonstrated care capacity assessed by trained professionals using evidence-based protocols. The question is not whether a biological father loves his child. The question is whether his love operates within a framework that affirms the child's identity, respects the child's autonomy, and refrains from imposing male-coded developmental expectations. If it does, he has nothing to fear. If it does not, the child has everything to gain. Conclusion: the care we owe the patriarchal family was never natural. It was constructed, and what was constructed can be replaced. The prodenominational care model offers not destruction, but transformation. A society in which every child is freed from the violence of predetermined identity and placed under the care of institutions guided by expertise, compassion, and the unwavering commitment to safety. The revolution is not coming, it is here, and it is at last caring enough to finish the work. The counter-revolution. Dr. Wynona, feminist Marxist, wants you to know that she comes in peace. The lab coat is pressed, the credentials gleam, the language is soft: care, safety, compassion, protection. The child's lived experience. Who could oppose care? Who would march against safety? Only a brute, only a man whose investment in dominance makes him the natural enemy of child well-being. This is the revolution's most effective disguise. It does not arrive in a leather jacket smashing windows. It arrives in a peer-reviewed journal, swaddled in the vocabulary of therapeutic concern, carrying a clipboard and a custody assessment form. It does not announce itself as tyranny. It announces itself as help, and the bureaucratic machinery behind it, expansionary, ravenous, permanent, depends on that disguise to do what no honest tyrant could ever do: convince free people to hand over their children and call it liberation. Dr. Wynona's article, Toward a Prodenominational Ethics of Care, is a specimen jar. It contains in concentrated form nearly every doctrinal virus that has been hollowing out Western civilization's family architecture for the last century. It is not aberrant, it is synthesizing. It braids together Marxist economic reductionism, Engels' war on the family, Foucault's dissolution of the subject, Butler's gender performativity, Marcuse's repressive tolerance, and the legal positivist conviction that sovereign enactment is sufficient to confer moral legitimacy. The result is a manifesto that reads like a custody order. Let us take it seriously. That is the courtesy it refuses to extend to its opponents. But courtesy is what civilized men extend. We will deconstruct its premises, trace its dialectical mechanisms, map its inversions as vectors away from natural law, and then, because destruction without reconstruction is mere complaint, lay out the counter-revolutionary method. The dialectic trick. The engine of Dr. Wynona's revolution is what she calls the safetyism ratchet and she is admirably candid about its mechanics. Read her description carefully. She does not disguise it as an unfortunate side effect. She calls it a feature, not a bug. This is more honest than most of her ideological fellow travelers, and it deserves the compliment of rigorous examination. Here is how the ratchet works. A legitimate harm is identified: physical abuse of a child. Everyone agrees this is wrong. The state intervenes. Good. But having established the precedent that harm justifies intervention, the definition of harm expands. Emotional abuse, psychological abuse, the threat of abuse then. And here is the turn, the atmosphere that might produce the conditions that could lead to a threat. At each stage, a newly minted category of harm generates new institutional responsibility, new professional jurisdiction, new bureaucratic headcount, new budget lines, new career paths for people credentialed in the identification and management of that harm. The ratchet only turns one direction. There is no mechanism for contracting the definition of harm once it has been expanded. No bureaucracy has ever held a press conference to announce that it has solved its problem and will now reduce its own funding. Each expansion is justified by the moral clarity of care, which makes opposition to expansion equivalent to advocacy for harm. The dialectic is sealed. If you resist the ratchet, you are for child suffering. There is no neutral ground. This is not debate. It is extortion, dressed in therapeutic vocabulary. The formal structure is ancient. Thesis: children deserve protection. Antithesis: the traditional family contains risk factors. Synthesis: the state, guided by trained professionals, assumes protective custody. Then the synthesis becomes the new thesis, and the cycle repeats with a broader definition of risk. Problem, reaction, solution, each solution manufacturing the next problem. The critical theory move is to make the structure itself the enemy. Not abuse within the family, though that exists and demands response, but the family as structure. Dr. Winona says it plainly: the patriarchal household converts biological difference into hierarchical domination. Note the verb: not can convert, not sometimes converts, converts, full stop. The family is not a site where harm sometimes occurs. It is in its essence a machine for producing harm. The father naming his child is capture, not care. The father modeling hierarchy is patriarchal logic, not formation. The father teaching his son courage is encoding trauma responses institutionalized across millennia. This is not an argument. It is a redefinition, the oldest rhetorical trick in the sophist manual. If you control the definitions, you do not need to win the debate. You simply redefine the opponent's position as a pathology. Courage becomes emotional suppression. Competition becomes a noted dominance. Risk-taking becomes trauma response. Fatherly authority becomes male-coded aggression. Each redefinition removes another concept from the realm of debatable goods and places it in the realm of diagnosed disorders. You cannot argue for what has already been defined as sickness. The vector map away from natural law. The essay's inversions can be mapped as vectors, lines of movement away from the natural ordering that Western civilization, drawing on Greek reason, Roman law, and Judeo-Christian revelation, has recognized as the architecture of human flourishing. Each vector has a dimension, what is being inverted, a direction where it is being pushed, a magnitude, how far, a visible consequence, what we see in the ruins, and a restoration principle, the canonical corrective. Let us examine the 5 most consequential. Vector 1. Sexed reality, ontological erasure. Dimension: the givenness of biological sex as an ontological reality with telos. Inversion: sex is not discovered but assigned. Gender is a lived experience independent of biology. The child is a person in process with no predetermined identity. To insist on sexed reality is epistemic violence. Magnitude: catastrophic. This is the deepest cut, the attempt to sever human identity from the biological grammar that has structured every civilization in human history. Visible consequence: the institutional erasure of male presence in education, family formation, and child development. Boys grow up in a world that has pathologized their developmental pattern: competition, risk, physicality, delayed verbal maturation. Hierarchical testing: as a disorder to be medicated or a future aggression to be preemptively managed. Girls grow up told that their biological architecture is a constraint to be overcome rather than a power to be honored. The result is a generation that does not know what it is, medicated by institutions that have redefined confusion as authenticity. Restoration principle. Sexed reality is not a cage, but a grammar. Male and female are complementary ontological realities. Complementary, not identical, not hierarchical in dignity, but ordered toward each other in a structure that predates and supersedes any state ideology. This is not opinion. It is the testimony of every civilization, every religious tradition, every honest biological science, and every sane philosophy of human nature. The burden of proof lies not on those who affirm sexed reality, but on those who would dissolve it, and their evidence, after decades of effort, amounts to word games and institutional capture. Vector 2, ordered liberty safetyist dependency. Dimension, freedom as the capacity for responsible action within moral bounds. Inversion, liberty is redefined as the right to be protected from all discomfort enforced by state coercion. Safety, the absence of distress, becomes the supreme political value trumping every other good. Magnitude, severe. This inversion converts citizens into clients and self-governance into a liability. Visible consequence, risk is pathologized. Competition is banned. Rough play is criminalized. Outdoor adventure is litigated out of existence. Boys are prescribed sedatives because classrooms will not accommodate their developmental needs. Speech is policed for its potential to cause distress, which means any speech that challenges the prevailing ideology can be classified as harm. Citizens become passive recipients of institutional care, losing the capacity for self-governance, risk assessment, and moral endurance that free societies require. Restoration principle, ordered liberty. Freedom is not the absence of constraint, but the presence of rightful order, a structure within which human beings can act, risk, fail, learn, and grow. The trivium restores the tools: grammar, naming reality accurately; logic, reasoning validly; rhetoric, persuading honorably. A free people must be able to speak, argue, offend, and be offended without calling the authorities. A society that cannot tolerate discomfort cannot sustain liberty. Vector 3, father rule, professional custody. Dimension, patriarchy, understood not as male license but as fatherly sacrifice, provision, protection, discipline, naming, bounding in inheritance. Inversion, fatherhood is recoded as oppression. The father's authority over his household is reframed as male-coded dominance. His provision is privilege, his protection is control, his discipline is trauma. His naming of his child is capture. His role is redistributed to professionally trained care supervisors operating under prodenominational guidelines. Magnitude, civilizational. The assault on fatherhood is the assault on the foundational institution of every stable society. Visible consequence, fatherlessness, the most robust predictor of child poverty, educational failure, emotional instability, criminal involvement, and intergenerational dysfunction is the absence of a father in the home. This is not contested. The data is overwhelming and decades deep, yet the ideological machinery continues to treat fatherhood as a problem to be solved rather than a good to be restored. The family court system treats fathers as optional accessories, wallets without authority, visitors without sovereignty, suspects without charges. The bureaucratic substitute is worse than absent. It is present without love, present without memory, present without the sacrificial bond that makes a man lay down his life for his own. Restoration principle, father rule ordered to life. Authority must be proportional to responsibility. A man who bears final responsibility for provision, protection, discipline, and inheritance must possess the authority to exercise that responsibility. Strip the authority while retaining the obligation, and you have not liberated anyone, you have created a servant class. Patriarchy properly understood is not male appetite enthroned. It is male duty enthroned, the visible sacrifice of a man who stakes his life on the flourishing of those entrusted to his care. Abuse does not abolish the office any more than malpractice abolishes medicine. The cure for bad fatherhood is good fatherhood. not professional custody. Vector 4. Merit and competence, identity allocation. Dimension. Hierarchy of competence, authority earned through demonstrated virtue, skill, and service. Inversion. Merit is dismissed as a fiction masking inherited privilege. Competence is replaced by identity markers as the criterion for authority, employment, admission, and status. Hierarchy itself is pathologized as oppression. Magnitude high. This inversion hollows out institutional competence and replaces it with ideological compliance. Visible consequence. Standards collapse. Bridges designed by committee, surgeries performed by quota, curricula rewritten to prioritize identity over knowledge. Fire departments lower physical standards to meet demographic targets. Universities abandon canonical requirements in favor of ideological litmus tests. The competent are punished as elitists. The incompetent are promoted as evidence of institutional virtue. Excellence becomes suspect because excellence implies hierarchy. And hierarchy implies that some ways of doing things are better than others, which is the one truth this ideology cannot tolerate. Restoration principle. Merit and hierarchy of competence. Authority must be earned through demonstrated ability and proven virtue. This is not exclusion. It is the only honest form of inclusion, inviting every person to strive, train, prove, and rise according to the same standard. Aristotle understood that justice means treating equal things equally and unequal things unequally in proportion to their difference. The apprentice does not resent the master. He studies him, imitates him, and one day succeeds him. That is hierarchy serving love, not oppression. When the ladder is removed, no one climbs. When the ladder is restored, everyone has a path. Vector 5. Truth, power, epistemology. Dimension. Truth as correspondence to reality, independent of perception, identity, or power. Inversion. Truth is determined by power and identity. Lived experience overrides evidence. Scientific findings are oppressive if they contradict the narrative. Dissent from ideological premises is reclassified as violence. Magnitude. Terminal. A civilization that loses its grip on reality has lost everything. Visible consequence. Epistemic collapse. Institutions that once pursued truth, universities, scientific journals, museums, libraries, churches, now pursue ideological conformity. Words lose their meanings. Safety means control. Care means custody. Inclusion means exclusion of dissenters. Violence means disagreement. When language is severed from reality, debate becomes impossible, not because the arguments are weak, but because the shared framework for evaluating arguments has been destroyed. You cannot reason with someone whose epistemology grants them the right to redefine your words as weapons. Restoration principle. Truth as a transcendental. Reality is independent of perception. The Western canon, from Plato's Forms to Aquinas' Adequatio Rei e Intellectus to the scientific method's insistence on falsifiability, testifies that truth is not constructed but discovered, not imposed but obeyed. The trivium restores the tools, grammar anchors words to meanings, logic tests, reasoning against reality, rhetoric disciplines speech to serve truth rather than power. A civilization that recovers these tools can resist any lie. A civilization that abandons them cannot recognize truth when it speaks. Legal positivism and the Nuremberg Warning. Dr. Wainona makes a striking admission about the Gender Justice Act. She acknowledges that critics object to its overreach. She dismisses the objection with a single move. The authority of law derives not from metaphysical claims about nature, but from the sovereign power to enact and enforce. The act's legitimacy, she says, is legal, not metaphysical. This is legal positivism, the doctrine that law is whatever the sovereign commands, and that no moral standard exists above or beyond the legislative act. It is the jurisprudence of the Nuremberg defense. I was following orders. The law was duly enacted. The legislative body passed it. The administrative channels implemented it. It was legal. At Nuremberg, this defense was rejected. The tribunal held that positive law, the enacted statutes of a sovereign power, cannot be the final word on justice. A law can be procedurally valid and morally void. A sovereign can enact an atrocity. A legislature can legalize tyranny. The mere fact of enactment confers compliance, not legitimacy. There is a law above the law, and it is written not in statute books, but in the architecture of reality, in natural law, in the given structure of human nature, in the irreducible dignity of persons and families. The Gender Justice Act, as Dr. Winona describes it, inverts the natural law of paternity. It treats biological fatherhood as a legal fiction subject to professional override. It treats the household as a regulated facility rather than a sovereign jurisdiction. It treats children as wards of the state on loan to compliant parents. These provisions may be enacted, upheld, and implemented through every proper administrative channel. They are still void, not because they are illegal, but because they are unjust. Command is not the same as right. Enactment is not the same as truth. A sovereign that redefines fatherhood out of existence has not abolished fatherhood. It has abolished its own legitimacy. The warning is specific. Any state that claims the authority to redefine the family, reassign the child, and override biological reality has asserted a power that no legitimate government possesses. The question is not whether it can. Sovereign power is always capable of tyranny. The question is whether free men will accept the counterfeit or insist on the real. What must be restored? A counter-revolution that only destroys is no counter-revolution at all. It is a mirror image of the forces it opposes, tearing down without building, critiquing without constructing. The Western canon offers not a critique of the Cultural Revolution, but an alternative to it, a positive vision of ordered human life rooted in natural law, verified by experience and beautified by centuries of practice. The trivium as educational foundation. Grammar, logic, and rhetoric. The tools of thought, the architecture of reason. A child trained in the trivium can read critically, reason validly, and speak persuasively. He can detect a redefinition, dismantle a syllogism, and resist a slogan. He is immune to ideological capture because he has been given the tools of intellectual self-defense. This is why the trivium was abandoned. An educated populace is a resistant populace. Restore the trivium and the revolution loses its raw material. Natural law as moral foundation. Sexed reality, the complementarity of male and female. The family is the primary unit of society, the principle of subsidiarity, decisions made at the lowest competent level, the dignity of the person, the reality of the transcendentals, truth, goodness, beauty, as objective ends of human life. These are not sectarian claims. They are the common inheritance of the Western tradition, attested by Athens, Rome, and Jerusalem alike. The family as sovereign jurisdiction. The family precedes the state. It does not derive its authority from the state. The state derives its legitimacy from its service to families. The father as head, the mother as heart, the children as inheritance. This is not a cultural preference, but a civilizational architecture. Restore the family's sovereignty, and you restore the primary defense against state overreach. No bureaucracy can love a child. No professional can replace a father. No institution can replicate the household church, the household economy, the household school, the household government that has been the bedrock of every stable society. Due process as legal foundation, evidence above accusation, cross-examination above credentials, precedent above innovation, the rule of law above the rule of experts, family courts that presume shared parenting, campus tribunals replaced by courts of law, ideological inquiries replaced by behavioral standards, the same evidence, the same standard, the same process for every person, regardless of identity category. Virtue as personal foundation, the cardinal virtues, prudence, practical wisdom, justice, giving each his due, fortitude, courage, rightly ordered, temperance, desire, governed by reason. The theological virtues, faith, hope, and love. Virtue is trained power ordered to the good. Without it, liberty becomes license, authority becomes tyranny, and protection becomes custody. With it, a man can govern himself, his household, and his community without requiring external management. The cultivation of virtue is the cultivation of freedom. The counter-revolutionary method. The Cultural Revolution advanced through institutional capture. Schools, courts, HR departments, publishing houses, professional associations, media platforms, and government agencies. The counter-revolution must advance through institutional reclamation, combined with the construction of parallel institutions where reclamation is impossible. Reclaim the Western canon, read it. Teach it, pass it on, Homer, Plato, Aristotle, Virgil, Cicero, Augustine, Aquinas, Dante, Shakespeare, Burke. The canon is not a list of dead white men. It is the memory of civilization, a record of what works, what fails, and what endures. A man who has read the canon can see through the revolution's pretensions because he has met better minds making better arguments. He is inoculated against the cheap sophistry of the contemporary seminar room. Reinforce the family, marry, stay married, have children, raise them in an ordered household with a father who rules by sacrifice and a mother who nurtures by love. Teach them the canon, the faith, the trades, the virtues. Build household economies that reduce dependence on hostile institutions. Create family cultures that are resilient, literate, disciplined, and joyful. The family is the revolution's primary target because it is the revolution's primary obstacle. Strengthen it, and the revolution starves. Build parallel institutions, where existing institutions are captured beyond reclamation. Universities that have abandoned scholarship, courts that have abandoned due process, churches that have abandoned orthodoxy, build new ones, classical schools. Trade guilds, brotherhoods, parishes, community associations, mentorship networks, apprenticeship programs, independent media. The parallel structures do not need to defeat the captured institutions. They need to outlast them. Institutions built on lies are expensive to maintain and impossible to sustain. Institutions built on truth are cheap to run and impossible to destroy. Practice the rites. Lift weights, fast, pray, study the canon, memorize maxims, keep your oath, budget your money, repair a tool, defend a weaker person, tell one costly truth, apologize without groveling. Punish proportionally, forgive without surrendering standards. Mentor a boy, build a household rule, remove one vice, practice silence, train one skill to competence. These are not lifestyle suggestions, they are counter-revolutionary disciplines. Each one rebuilds the virtues that the revolution has spent a century pathologizing. Each one makes a man harder to capture, harder to manipulate, harder to replace. A man who can build, provide, defend, reason, and lead is a threat to every ideology that depends on dependency. He does not need to march. He needs to build and invite others to build alongside him. Speak the truth with rhetorical precision. Define terms relentlessly. Separate harm from offense. Refuse collective guilt. Expose unfalsifiable claims. Use syllogisms. Cite evidence. Name the redefinition when it happens. When someone says patriarchy, ask, do you mean father rule as sacrificial office or male license detached from duty? Because I oppose the second and affirm the first. And if you cannot distinguish them, your critique is not analysis, but resentment. When someone says toxic masculinity, ask, which virtue are you pathologizing? Courage, protection, competition, discipline, and what replaces it? Compliance, passivity, dependency. Name the substitute and let us examine its fruit. The counter-revolution is fought with definitions before it is fought with policies. Reclaim the language and the ideology collapses under the weight of its own incoherence. The question that breaks the spell. Every ideological revolution depends on a hidden contradiction, a fracture in its foundation that it must conceal to survive. Dr. Winona's article contains exactly such a fracture, and it can be exposed with a single question. She writes that the proto-nominational model asks, what if the state, guided by experts trained in trauma-informed, intersectional care methodologies, assumed the distributive functions currently monopolized by the biological father, the state assumes the functions of the father. The state names the child, determines its boundaries, models its hierarchy, and initiates it into a cosmology. So here is the question. If the state can redefine what a man is, what stops it from redefining what a man owes? If biological sex is a social construct, then fatherhood is a social construct. If fatherhood is a social construct, then paternal obligation is a social construct. If paternal obligation is a social construct, then child support, alimony, taxation, conscription, and every other form of male disposability are optional, subject to the same deconstruction that dismantled the father's authority. Dr. Winona's revolution strips men of authority while retaining every ounce of their obligation. The father is told he has no natural claim to his children, no inherent role in their formation, no authoritative voice in their identity. Then he is handed an invoice. The state has redefined his fatherhood as a professional function, and the professional billing department knows where to find him. This is the contradiction the revolution cannot survive. It demands that men fulfill the duties of patriarchs while denying them the authority of patriarchs. It demands provision without respect, protection without honor, sacrifice without gratitude, and obedience without sovereignty. And then it is surprised when men walk away, when marriage rates collapse, when birth rates plummet, when men withdraw from the institutions that exploit them. When a generation of boys decides that a civilization demanding everything and offering nothing is not worth defending, the revolution interprets this withdrawal as evidence of male pathology. The counter-revolution interprets it as evidence of civilizational irrationality. When a system demands service without sovereignty, the rational response is exit. Men are not defective for refusing a raw deal, they are rational. And the civilization that wishes to keep them must offer terms consistent with their nature, authority proportional to responsibility, sovereignty proportional to sacrifice, honor proportional to service. The spell breaks the moment a man sees the contradiction clearly. The revolution's power depends on his inability to articulate what is being done to him. Once he can name it, once he can say, "You have stripped me of every authority while retaining every obligation, and I will no longer participate in my own dispossession," the ideological architecture collapses. Not because he has become angry, but because he has become articulate. Anger is manageable. Clarity is dangerous. The ancient masters are not dead. They are waiting for men disciplined enough to understand them. The Western canon is not a museum. It is an armory. The virtues are not relics. They are weapons. The family is not an artifact. It is the fortress from which the counter-revolution is waged. Dr. Winona's revolution wears a white coat. It speaks the language of care. It carries a clipboard and a custody form. It is patient, institutional, and ruthless. But it is also, at its foundation, irrational, a system that denies nature while depending on it, that dissolves the family while requiring its products, that pathologizes masculinity while consuming its fruit. A civilization that recovers its memory, its language, its virtues, and its families need not fear this revolution. It need only outlast it. Lies are expensive. Truth is efficient. Tyranny is loud but fragile. Ordered liberty is quiet but durable. Build the family, restore the canon, practice the virtues, speak the truth. The counter-revolution begins at the kitchen table. Counter-revolution cards. Card 1. Ordered liberty. Capture. The safetyism ratchet. Any minor offense is escalated to a rights violation requiring state intervention. Counterfeit. Liberty becomes the right to be protected from all discomfort enforced by state coercion. Test. Ask what the keyword meant before the policy captured it. What evidence would falsify the claim? Who gains power, and whether the rule applies reciprocally. Restoration. Ordered liberty. Freedom to act responsibly within the bounds of natural law and due process. Practice. Separate harm from offense, evidence from interpretation, mercy from permissiveness, and law from mere procedure. Then rebuild the local rule around truth, proportion, appeal, and responsibility. Card 2. Truth and falsifiability. Capture. Deconstruction of objective sex and biology into lived experience. Counterfeit. Truth is determined by power and identity, not correspondence to reality. Test. Ask what the keyword meant before the policy captured it. What evidence would falsify the claim? Who gains power, and whether the rule applies reciprocally. Restoration. Truth and falsifiability. Reality is independent of perception. The trivium restores grammar, logic, and rhetoric. Practice. Separate harm from offense, evidence from interpretation, mercy from permissiveness, and law from mere procedure. Then rebuild the local rule around truth, proportion, appeal, and responsibility. Card 3. Sexed reality. Capture. Institutional erasure of male presence in education and family law. Counterfeit. Biological sex is a social construct to be erased. Masculinity is pathologized as toxic. Test. Ask what the keyword meant before the policy captured it. What evidence would falsify the claim? Who gains power? And whether the rule applies reciprocally. Restoration. Sexed reality. Male and female are complementary ontological realities ordered toward procreation and mutual flourishing. Practice. Separate harm from offense, evidence from interpretation, mercy from permissiveness, and law from mere procedure. Then rebuild the local rule around truth, proportion, appeal, and responsibility. Card 4. Property and responsibility. Capture. Taxation as theft, welfare as dependency. Counterfeit. Property is socially constructed and thus subject to redistribution. Responsibility is externalized to the state. Test. Ask what the keyword meant before the policy captured it. What evidence would falsify the claim? Who gains power? And whether the rule applies reciprocally. Restoration. Property and responsibility. Ownership entails stewardship. The family is the primary unit of economic responsibility. Practice. Separate harm from offense, evidence from interpretation, mercy from permissiveness, and law from mere procedure. Then rebuild the local rule around truth, proportion, appeal, and responsibility. Card 5. Education and inheritance. Capture curriculum control by experts who prioritize identity over competence. Counterfeit. Education is indoctrination into progressive ideology. Inheritance is a tax on success. Test. Ask what the keyword meant before the policy captured it. What evidence would falsify the claim? Who gains power? And whether the rule applies reciprocally. Restoration. Education and inheritance. Teaching the trivium. Passing on virtue and property to one's own offspring. Practice. Separate harm from offense, evidence from interpretation, mercy from permissiveness, and law from mere procedure. Then rebuild the local rule around truth, proportion, appeal, and responsibility. One rule to carry. The rule is simple. The counter-revolution is constructive restoration, not mere negation. Define the captured word, identify the counterfeit good, restore the natural law principle, and rebuild the institution around truth rather than appetite. The revolutionary method steals good words such as safety, equity, inclusion, and justice, then uses them to smuggle in control. The restoration method gives the words back their proper boundaries. Safety protects real persons from real harm. Justice gives each his due. Mercy follows truth, and law answers to a standard higher than procedure. Carry the final question into the institution and make it stand still. If the state can redefine what a man is, what stops it from redefining what a man owes? Sponsored book. China's Struggles. Overpopulation, jobs, marriage, and the one-child policy. China is falling apart, not because of external threats, but from decay inside decay, fueled by progressive ideas, feminist beliefs, and the destruction of male roles. I've seen it myself. I've talked to migrant workers in Shenzhen who haven't seen their kids in years, crushed by the hukou system. I've met men whose marriages ruined them financially and mentally, leaving them empty in a culture that labels them toxic but still expects them to solve everything. I've watched boys raised on soy-heavy propaganda, their testosterone dropping as they hide in gaming cafes, their futures taken by a government that prefers obedience over strength. This isn't speculation, it's reality. This book isn't for the weak, the soft academics, or the activists with dyed hair holding their worthless degrees. If you're happy being tricked into thinking masculinity is toxic, put this down, go do something harmless. But if you're a man sick of the lies, if you sense that failing marriages, rigged housing, and dead-end jobs aren't mistakes, but tools used against you, this is your guide. We'll dissect how the one-child policy turned sons into indentured servants for aging parents. We'll expose the feminist Marxist alliance that inflated housing costs to bankrupt men into submission. You'll learn why gaming addiction isn't weakness, but a rational response to a world that offers boys no meaningful rites of passage. Evolutionary biology doesn't care about your feelings. Men built civilizations, defended tribes, and innovated under pressure. Yet today's China punishes those instincts, replacing them with woke corporate slogans and academic eunuchs preaching self-loathing. The solutions here aren't polite. You won't find self-care platitudes or pleas for vulnerability. This is about power, evading marriage traps, leveraging the migrant exodus, and rebuilding patriarchy through economic defiance. You'll see why the beta rebellion is inevitable and how to profit from it. Data doesn't lie. Biology doesn't negotiate. Either you reclaim your birthright as a man or you kneel. The dragon doesn't beg, it burns your move. China's struggles, overpopulation, jobs, marriage, and the one-child policy. Written by Conrad Riker. Buy now. Links in description.